Today, I'm sitting down with Kent and Anne-Marie Barton. They are the parents and guiding figures of a remarkably creative family. In 2010, in a moment that changed everything, the Barton family experienced a devastating and sudden loss of their beautiful daughter and rising musician, Sophie Rose Barton.
Years have come and gone.
She fell over, and I had no idea why.
I could tell it was serious. We got very scared at that point.
She got up for a second, and then she never got up again.
They came out and told us that she didn't make it.
I was a junior in high school that same year and at girls' camp that same June. I just can't help but think of her as a peer.
But in the end, everything's going to be good because of the atonement. That's what I truly believe, is that the true miracle is the atonement.
I choose joy, and I know I did that for Sophie because I suddenly realized that that is what she would want. With the help of Sophie's Place, we're able to share her story and feel love and happiness.
She would want us to be happy.
We were able to teach people what music therapy really was. They really didn't need to know her, but they feel her.
In the car with the radio loud.
She is singing to 1,000 people, and she is changing lives.
Burning down the house.
Today, I'm sitting down with Kent and Anne-Marie Barton. They are the parents and guiding figures of a remarkably creative family. A family which includes artists, photographers, entrepreneurs, designers, and of course, true to the show, several musicians. As a renowned interior designer herself, Anne-Marie has made a career out of creating intentional spaces for her clients. So I'm super excited and especially anxious to dive into this conversation and discover what it was that she and Kent did together to cultivate an environment that allowed for so much creativity and self-expression amongst their kids. In 2010, in a moment that changed everything, the Barton family experienced a devastating and sudden loss of their beautiful daughter and rising musician, Sophie Rose Barton. From that heartache came a mission of healing. The family created Sophie's Place, which is now located in 9 children's hospitals around the country. Having been in the same grade at a neighboring high school to Sophie, her story has always had a very profound impact on me personally. I hope through this conversation to share her story, her music, and the profound legacy that continues to live on in her name. So Anne-Marie and Kent, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Welcome to More Than Musicians. We are so excited to have you guys. I know you guys are busy, so we feel very lucky to have you.
It is an honor to be with you, and I love what you do. And
Thank
it
you.
gives us a chance to spread the word about music therapy, and we just love to be able to speak about Sophie and the beauty.
Sophie's still a big part of our life, and a big reason is because of Sophie's Place.
Yeah.
So we're happy anytime we get a chance to talk about it.
So grateful. I mean, I just saw your phone as you tucked it away, and your screensaver is her beautiful face. And so I'm grateful for this. It feels like a very sacred and reverent honor to have a conversation about someone so special. So thank you again for being here. I wonder if we could just start kind of by you telling us about your family and yourselves, and just kind of give us a little introduction.
I guess I'll begin. We have 5 children, and I've transplanted to Utah, deeply transplanted. I came out to try BYU to see if I liked being out west. I'd never been, and I saw the mountains, and then eventually met Kent, and his family business was already here in Utah. My dreams were down a different path. Kent kind of romanced me into thinking about family. Mm-hmm. So
we stayed. She stayed.
I stayed.
Luckily, and we got married, and life took off, and I was involved in art and art publishing, and have a design background and art background. And so I grew up, my mother was an artist, and I grew up just creating art and doing things, and it kind of influenced me and all my siblings. We all went into a creative field, and then it went on to generations where all of our kids are artists in one form or another. Nobody really does anything like, no accountants.
We could use an attorney or a doctor, but there's just no chance. And that's really where we find happiness, and it really makes sense. In fact, one of the songs that Sophie wrote about, and it was one of her early ones when she was trying to figure out how to write music, which was an interesting part of, really, I was kind of mostly involved during that early stage, but she talked about working until the morning light. And, you know, that's really what we've done, and tried to share with our kids as much as we can so that in the evenings we could pick up the work again. And I'll tell you that Kent actually made the mistake of saying, hey, maybe in 5 years we'll build a house. And I, at that point, had 2 children and was due to have Sophie. And we decided, okay, but in order to build a house, I had to learn what was involved and self-teach and go get all the bids. We hired a retired contractor that could still get a permit. And then I had to go about and get prices that fit into our very little budget.
Yes.
And at one point, this ring, my engagement ring, I almost sold to get a shake roof. And I don't know, we went a lot of years with an asphalt roof, but I just got one a couple of years ago, and I'm so glad. But at the point when I was getting all of those bids and putting that together, we tore down the house that was there, and then I went into the hospital and had Sophie the next day. But 6 months later, to the day, we moved into a new house. And I had no idea. We had no idea that was fast or anything. Kent did a lot of the painting. We were putting plaster up on the walls. I mean, we were just instinctive, but, you know, it was kind of a DIY.
Wow.
And
look what it's led to.
I know.
That's what it did. It's
It
kind of
really
amazing.
was.
It's a different path than she was on, but it turns out, I think it's her true passion.
Yeah.
We had somebody come to the door one day shortly after and say, hey, I want to see some of the cabinets in your house. So-and-so suggested I come by. And I said, oh, yeah, you can come on in. And she saw the cabinets. And then as she was leaving, she said, would you do my house? And I thought, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
You know, so I said, just a moment. And I went to the restroom because I needed to think about it and kind of to pray.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I came out and just said, yes, and then figured it out.
Yeah.
So that's the basis of why I'm in design today. And it did come naturally, but it was a lot of hard work and learning. And I do love to learn more. And that's kind of why I like to share so much, because I think it's fun to share the knowledge.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I admire both of you and what you built. You know, Kent, we were speaking before, and it sounds like you're very much a part of that business, and it has become a joint venture that requires both of your artistic skill sets.
Definitely.
If I can, I want to go back just a little bit. So it sounds like Sophie lines up third in your family.
She's the middle.
Okay. And I kind of was hoping that you would share with us, what is it that maybe, you know, the generation before you, your family did, and what did you continue to do that fostered a space in your home? You know, you create these beautiful spaces, but what do you think it was that created the space for your kids to be so creative?
I think it was just always creating things and giving them opportunities to create. And it was just kind of things that we did while they grew up. And you know, our projects, we got way into them, you know, and they were really interested, and they would actually even go over to grandma's house and paint with her sometimes.
Well, she lived right next door.
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
And so a lot of times she was maybe babysitting, but they were getting art lessons.
Yeah.
And reflections was very important to us. The kids were always trying to win reflections in elementary school, and Tessa did once. For like the state, so that was cool.
What category was she doing? I now would assume photography
No,
is
it's
something like
painting.
that. It was painting. So
Yes.
actual, okay.
In fact, we always did painting.
They did. I mean, Tessa did music, photography,
that's true.
painting.
Yeah.
She did a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Which makes sense now.
Yes.
You know, I mean, she was always the way she is today.
I've loved to watch their business just grow.
Yeah.
I'm a Tessa app user myself. And so
me too.
it's amazing. I mentioned to you, I went to high school with her husband, Cole, and he's a friend of mine. And I just have loved to watch their success and what a creative path can take you down. You know, sometimes I feel like parents of creatives may sometimes worry, like, how's this going to make a living? Where's this going to lead? And it's amazing to see both you and your business and your kids and how they've just made it successful.
I think the other thing we tried to do as they got a little older was when they expressed interest in something, we tried to give them as much opportunity as possible to experience it and try it. And that way, I think that was a big factor in what they ended up doing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they'd sometimes try something and then decide to go another direction. And we just wanted to give them whatever opportunity to explore it.
I want to talk about the kinds of exact questions we were asked by the kids that led to really what they do. I remember Tessa saying she thought she wanted to study fashion design. And we found a school out in Taylorsville that actually offered courses in that. So we would drive her over there for one period of school and then drive her back to Olympus High School. And then came the time when she was thinking a little more seriously. And we said, well, let's not pine away for it. Maybe there's a program in New York City that could be really helpful. And then you won't be posting your dreams on going to college for something that you really don't know if you love. Mm-hmm. Well, she took us up on that. And that has been the end of us because, of course, she moved to New York City after that. But when she went to New York and as a junior in high school, lived in Connecticut with my brother, and she would travel into the city alone and go to FIT. And what did she learn? She came back and said, I don't want to be a fashion designer. I want to have my own magazine. I want to photo fashion.
Wow.
And I think it was important that she did that step. Mm-hmm. And I think it's about courage.
Yeah.
A question that Sophie asked, I'll never forget. And I know right where we stood when she said, Mom, I know I'm going to be a singer. I know I'm going to be a songwriter, but what else? And she asked that. And so I started thinking, well, what else are you interested in? She said, I love children. And then she said, I like to help children. And so immediately I thought of a candy striper because that's what I always wanted to do. And we found a program and we went up to Primary Children's Hospital. And as we went through the training and came out, you had to choose whether you wanted 80 hours, 40 hours, you know. She turned and said, Mom, I want to do both.
Wow.
And I think just listening and making them so important was really how we got there. And then how about listening to our son, Luke, who did not want to take piano because he was so darn good at guitar.
Yeah.
And he was the one child we didn't browbeat to take piano first. But I want to say, I'm asked a lot, why are the kids so musical? Why that?
Yeah.
It's a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. As parents, I had to ask for more. I would be in the kitchen. Hello, let's play that again.
Yeah.
You know, and you do have to sacrifice always being the best friend. You do have to parent.
Yeah.
And what I say is it's worth it.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, they're like any child, you don't want to practice, you know, and it took a lot of that in the beginning, but they got to a stage where they loved music. And Sophie was the prime example for all of them. They all played different instruments, but Sophie just loved it so much. She would always sing. She would, you know, once she started.
So much the kids said, please stop singing. And I really did say to her one day, and it's like today, really. I said, one day we're going to tell your story that you would never stop singing and you drove your sister and brothers crazy. And we thought we would be telling it like so that people knew the real Sophie. But here we are today telling that.
Yeah. So she really drew everybody in and they all kind of wanted to start doing other things. But I got to the point where they loved it so much a lot of them, they couldn't walk in the house without first reaching for the guitar. And then that'd be the first thing they do sometimes when they would come in the house. So
it's so fabulous. Was that something they would do together? Would they
yes.
collab and
Sophie
jam together?
and Tessa had begun to sing together, perform together, write together, and it was the time of their lives.
They were a duet, and they would go around performing. They started to record together. We were the roadies, so we would help them haul their gear around. They'd do a show. It was really fun.
State fairs and things, and sometimes just a grocery store.
Yeah.
I was so impressed with Sophie. I can't believe she was willing. She was quite young, and they would set up performances for her in like the grocery store during the holidays, and she would sing. I mean, I don't know. She lived by the expression, feel the fear and do it anyway. And she just picked that. And that is really a lasting, meaningful part of our lives. And we've used it so many times. And I think her courage and all of the children's courage to go out on stage, I mean, it's hard to do. And they had each other, and I think it made it easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when Sophie passed, it was right in the middle of the Sophie-Tessa duet. And so Tessa had to choose whether to carry on or what to do about it. And so she recruited the boys. And so then they started playing together. They created a band. And for them, it was a healing process, and for us. So our favorite thing was to listen to them play music. And when they did, they felt Sophie was still there and with them. And so, that really set up, that's part of the inspiration of Sophie's Place, because we knew nothing about music therapy. But we have experienced the way music can heal.
Yeah,
absolutely. I love to see and to hear that it's something that you leaned into. I'm learning about myself that with my own, grief, I sometimes turn away from those experiences that make me face the feelings of it. And I feel like music is one of those where it kind of brings you to the core of it. And in so many instances, I think people would have maybe turned away from the music if it was too painful.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys turned right towards it.
We
certainly
did it,
painful.
But she set the stage.
Yeah.
You know, and actually I haven't been able to listen to her music much at all because it's difficult to hear her.
Yeah.
And she was so good and she was so tender and she wrote those songs and those words at a very young age. Her album is on Spotify.
Yeah.
So it makes it really easy to, if I'm talking to somebody and telling her story, it's really wonderful to be able to pass on. And she tells her own story through the music. Mm-hmm. But I think it is important to tell how we even got Sophie's Place. I don't know if you want to hear about that.
There's two things that I'm hoping we can chat about. For someone who doesn't know Sophie's story, could you help the audience listening understand that? And then, yes, I'd love to delve into Sophie's Place. So can you maybe take us back to her high school years and just pick up there?
Well, she was 3 and wore cheetah pants and entertained crowds in our house. It started with that. And she was constantly wanting to perform and had a delight to herself. And then she asked, how do you even write music? She had started guitar. And so we went around to people that knew and did write music. And I remember her asking so many questions, and then to think how it sort of came naturally to her. As we know, that is the best way.
Yeah.
But she was also a cheerleader. She was an A student with a lot of hard work. She giggled. She wore vintage cowboy boots.
She smiled all the time. She'd walk into the room and the room would light up. It was the way she was. She was in high school, she was someone who always looked out for the underdog or somebody that needed a friend. And, she did so many things that we never even knew about. It's not like she came home from school and said, hey, I did this for somebody,
No.
you know. We knew nothing about that. After she had passed, so many people came to us and said, this is what Sophie did for me.
Yeah.
And she really helped and changed lives in her young age. It was an amazing example to us.
Recently, after she had passed, I found one of her journals, and she had 8. So she was very,
Wow.
she's left us so much, and I can't read them, but I honor them. And in it was a piece of paper that said, 20 things I want to do before I die. And who does that?
Yeah.
And so we've, as a family, tried to do those things. And one of them was change a person's life.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of things, funny things, sneak out of the house with my friends.
Sleep on the tramp with the family.
And then a lot of musical goals, you know, play a solo in front of 1,000 people, you know, write 100 songs. She just had all these ideas and goals. Yeah. But the one that really resonates is change somebody's life, because, you know, through Sophie's Place and the legacy she left, that's exactly what she's done.
Wow.
We went to girls' camp, and I decided to take off work so that I could be a part of it. And I didn't want to miss some time with Sophie. And that morning, you go out early to get on the bus with the girls. And Kent even remarked to me that when he looked into Sophie's room, he thought it was me, or vice versa.
Yeah, for a second, I thought, oh, it was Anne-Marie, but it was Sophie, because they did look a lot alike.
And he called me to tell me that. And that's something I really cherish, that you had that moment. We were a lot alike. And anyway, she arrived, and I had taken a moment to go to the store and get some fun things, and I spread them all over her bed for the camp. And I remember hearing later that she had said, when she saw that all over her little cot, she said, my mom just does things like that. So happy I did it that day. So one thing is follow your thoughts, follow that intuition. There were several steps in my life that if I hadn't, it would have been awful. But nonetheless, we were going out in the boats where you paddle, and all the girls were having so much fun, and the moms and the leaders. And then we decided to walk on up to another area after we finished. And as we were walking, I reached to Sophie and I called her Angel Breath, because that was one of her nicknames. And it wasn't intentional. It was just, I just said, hey, Angel Breath. And somebody heard me say it, and they said, whoa, is that her? You know, I said, oh my gosh, Sophie has so many nicknames. And one was Sweet Beggar, and many others. And so I was telling them about each of her names. And she was with me, and she heard the love that was behind each of the nicknames. And it was at that moment that she fell over. Wow. And I had no idea why. And you're up in the wilderness. And it was a really desperate feeling. She got up for a second, and then she never got up again. And they did call off a life flight, and that's been really hard for me to live with. But an ambulance did arrive, and we had to drive very fast down to the hospital in Heber. And about that point, you got a phone call?
Yeah, I got a call to come up to the hospital. They said Sophie wasn't feeling well, but it didn't seem so serious. They thought maybe it was dehydration or sunstroke or something like that. So I didn't think too much of it, but I was concerned. But as soon as I walked in, I could tell it was serious, and it was very frantic. Doctors coming in and out, and we got very scared at that point. Not too much after that, they came out and told us that she didn't make it. And it was an arrhythmia, an unbeknownst arrhythmia to us. Yeah. She'd never had any problem. She's very active, very physically active, no problems. So it was just a surprise. And the heartbeat, it got out of rhythm, and that's why she fainted, and it wasn't beating properly. And it stopped, and they got it going a couple of times. But in the end, it was just too week. They couldn't get it in rhythm, and it gave out. And so we were just devastated. I just can't even go into how that feels and how devastated we were.
But remember, you had the courage. He had more courage than I did. I was not able to do anything, but you went in.
Yeah, so after an hour or more of just, lying on the ground and crying and wailing and
Gnashing
whatnot,
of teeth.
I gathered myself and I said, I need to go see her. And Anne-Marie said, I don't think I can. And I said, well, I'm going to go in. And so my oldest son was with me. And so I was about to walk in, and the doctor said, oh, by the way, she still has tubes down her throat. And the way she appears, with this tubing and things is, I don't know, just preparing you so you know what you're going to see. We can't remove it until the medical examiner comes tomorrow, because now it was night, And so it gave, I had to think, do I really want to see that as my last sight? And I thought, well, I got to go. And so I walked into the room and I looked down at Sophie, and there she was with the tubing, and all that just melted away. And I was looking at the most beautiful, being that I'd ever seen. And she was just beautiful. And then all of a sudden, I just felt this love and her wrapping her arms around me. And it was so real. I know that her spirit was with me and was loving me and hugging me. And it was a gift. It was a pure gift. That's something I'll never forget. And, I know she lives today in the spirit. And I just, that is the one thing. A lot of people have these amazing dreams and different things, but that's the one gift I was given that I hang on to for life.
Thank you so much, both of you. Sorry for sharing. So tender to think of her. Thank you. I just can't help but think of her as a peer. I was a junior in high school that same year, and at girls' camp that same June. Oh. And so, hearing that story on the news takes me right back there. But just to hear that tender experience that you had, that's your little girl. And I looked at your Instagram before this and your tributes to her on her birthday and her anniversaries. It's so special, the connection that you guys have had with her. And I don't know, I just have to think, why do some of these best little spirits go so soon? If I can, and this will be a little bit of a tender thought line, but I, a couple of months ago, ran into you both at the movie premiere of The Miracle.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. An Angel Studios production. And, it was all about, these experiences that people had had with prayer and divine intervention that couldn't be explained. And I just couldn't help myself but think of you two sitting watching that in a room with, I think, many who had experienced a loss where they had prayed for the miracle and they didn't receive the answer they were hoping for. And I was just, how do you make sense of that in life?
I'll speak on that a little bit. I was begging and yelling, screaming and praying. And it did really hurt to realize that you can't make it happen. You can't, all your life you've heard to pray and ask for help. So to me, it was a simple matter. I was going to pray and this was going to get better. I think it took me much longer than Kent to accept that God isn't really a respecter of persons, and he's made a world where things aren't perfect. That's part of the plan. And our bodies and danger, it's all there. He could save her, but he didn't. We know he could, but life is this way. It took me probably almost 8 years to really understand God's way and accept it. I felt, disappointed. I felt, did we deserve this? I felt all of those feelings. And I remember choosing to change that. We were in church and they asked for us to think about New Year's resolutions. And I decided to write on my piece of paper, I choose joy. And I know I did that for Sophie because I suddenly realized that that is what she would want. And I started to change. And with the help of Sophie's Place and knowing that we're giving back exactly what she wanted to do, we have a smile on her face and we're able to share her story and feel love and happiness and laugh again.
Well, we know what she would want,
Yeah.
and that plays a big part of it. She would want us to be happy.
Yeah.
But I just might add to that. I think it's a really hard question that maybe none of us can answer is why some people get that miracle and others don't. And, we probably just don't know why, but we know that it does happen. Some people get that, but what is for me, I guess the way I think about it is life is short, and like I said, I know that she lives and we're going to see her again. And so to me, the true miracle is the atonement of Jesus Christ. A lot of people, you come to find over years of living and through your own experiences, but with friends, family, and just other people, that everyone suffers one way or another. Our suffering is different from yours, and but everybody does. But in the end, everything's going to be good because of the atonement. And I guess that's a very faith-based belief, but that's what I truly believe, is that the true miracle is the atonement.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. As I've done this podcast, there's just these recurring themes that keep emerging. And the fact that bad things can happen to really good people, that is one of them, but that there has to be a choice in those moments to pivot to joy, to faith, to hope. So I think of, in receiving, this devastating news, you're at the hospital, how you have to go tell your kids, especially Tessa, who's her duo. How does that look, and how did they cope?
I am proud of the children, and I think they did better than I did. But I remember after the funeral, I go to that day all the time, and Tessa was sitting there, and so was their booker, which is the person that would set them up with all of their performances. And she was there, and she came right up to Tessa and said, "What do I tell the Utah State Fair? It's coming up." And she had to ask the question. And I saw Tessa think about it, and it reminded me a little bit of when they asked if I wanted to design their house. You could tell that there was a stupor of thought and a wonder. And then she turned and she said,
"Tell them I'll be there."
"Tell them I'll be there." And it was after that she reached out to each of the boys to form a band, support her. And they always said Sophie was the elephant in the room. She was always with them. And that they would do it really for her. And that is really what healed our family.
So beautiful. Thank you. I just think so many people turn away from that because it would be hard. And you guys have chosen to play the music, to move on, to go on and carry her name, because I'm sure that's what she would hope and want.
Yeah. And like you said, listening and hearing their voice, it can be painful. And it was. But at the same time, I think time is a blessing and a curse in a situation like this. You know, you do learn to cope with it. It never goes away, but the pain and the sorrow, but you learn to cope with it, and you kind of figure things out. But at the same time, the farther you are away from it, the reason it hurts more in the beginning is because everything's so fresh. And so it becomes a little distant. And so you hurt because of the love that you feel. And so when you listen to the music, you're closer to her.
Yeah.
And so it does hurt more.
Yeah.
But you kind of, I think over time you learn to embrace the pain and the
memories.
sorrow.
Yeah.
And so, but in a sweet way. And so it does hurt, but it's worth it. It's not something you can really do on a daily basis, but
Yeah. I heard an analogy about grief that I want to share with you. It's like grief is like a wave, and the swell is the first part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second part is the crash. And the third part of it is like what happens to a wave after it's crashed down on the beach. It just has this peaceful, dissipating moment.
That's beautiful.
And I'm
That's
actually
nice.
learning for myself that I like to, when the emotion swells, I like to cut it off and just
yeah.
distract, deflect, go away. And I think that's such a beautiful example, because when we allow ourselves to feel, maybe that's listening to the music, but when we allow ourselves to kind of go through the crash of the wave and like deal with the hard and the pain that comes up, then we get the peace that comes at the end. And I think that is the proper way to deal and to cope. I'm learning this for myself, that I haven't quite done some of the grieving that I need to do in the proper way, but to let yourself feel
Yeah.
the things that you need
It's
to.
important to realize too that you do grieve differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
There's no one way to do it.
It's probably not linear. It might come up again
Yeah.
and again and
most
again.
of the
yeah.
time I would have a very emotional day and Kent would be together.
Yeah.
He would feel good, and the vice versa.
Yeah.
And just being open to each other's style of grieving.
Yeah.
And then
Mm-hmm.
we grew together.
Yeah.
And that is a very
Yeah.
really important part. It could go either way.
Yes. And you see it go
Yeah.
Yeah.
the other way. And you guys are a beautiful example of what it can look like when you've reached the depths and you grow together and you choose to shine
It's
on,
a
to
choice.
grow together.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. This episode was made possible by The Piano Place. I can promise you that I will never run an ad on this show that I don't wholeheartedly believe in. This is one service I can confidently put my name behind. When I started The Piano Place 10 years ago, I had no idea just how deeply music would impact people. I've watched shy kids find their confidence, teens discover an emotional outlet, moms rediscover their connection to themselves, and families strengthen their homes through music. At The Piano Place, we match every student with a teacher who fits them, their unique personality, and their goals. Everything from our recitals to our state-of-the-art studio locations are designed to help inspire creativity from the moment our students walk in the door. Our tagline, Making More Than Musicians, gives insight to our main mission, which is to help kids learn to love and stick with lessons, all while discovering the great life lessons along the way. With 12 locations across Utah, it's never been easier to get started. You can visit our website, thepianoplaceutah.com, and if you mention More Than Musicians, you will get your first lesson free. You can call us at 801-893-2417. That's 801-893-2417. Give us a call today and we'll get you taken care of. I think that kind of leads us right into Sophie's Place, the legacy. And I'm hoping that you guys could share the story of how Sophie's Place came to be in that whole experience.
Also a miracle. So we didn't get the one miracle, but we've had a ton since. I got a phone call. It was early in the morning. It was about 10 months after we lost Sophie, and it was from Steve and Barb Young. And I grew up with Steve in Connecticut.
No.
We were
Okay.
already great friends. He was one of the first people at the hospital. He was playing in a golf tournament near the Heber Hospital, so
Yeah.
he was there. And I got this call, and she said, Barb said, I have an idea. And what if we did something for children that had to do with music? Well, it is a good idea. But she went further and said, I believe in music therapy. And I wonder if we could do something. Would it be at the YMCA? Would it be at the hospital? She was bringing up things, and I said, it's going to be at Primary Children's, where she was a volunteer.
Yes.
And to find space in a hospital with a brand new big idea is something that's very hard to come by. But one of the first people that came to visit me while I was bedridden after Sophie passed was a woman named Elizabeth Hale. And she too had lost a daughter. Somebody thought I should talk to her to get, perspective. When she was there, she told me that she was the head of the whole charity foundation
for the hospital.
For Primary Children's. That was really wonderful. But it wasn't until 10 months later, when this euphoric idea came forth, that I thought, what about Elizabeth Hale? And we made a phone call. We were able to find a space in that hospital, and we were able to teach people what music therapy really was, which is a prescription given by a doctor to help children heal. And also, I always want to say, to bring joy. When there's hard things in the hospital to endure, Sophie's place in music therapy does also deliver joy.
For sure. I think everybody knows music brings you joy, and they know less about what it does for your brain. And it opens up these triggers in the brain that allow you to heal faster and better, and allow you to do physical things. For an example, if a child has been has an accident, is not really using their hands to feed themselves, they'll pull out the music and give him a drum and a drumstick, and it just opens up these triggers, and they want to do something about it. They start using the drum, they start using their hands and their arms, and therefore that leads to where they can then start feeding themselves. So there are hundreds of examples. They're all different. Yeah. And so these music therapists are trained. They're angels. But they're trained, and so they just have different processes depending on what the end goal is.
They also record the children's songs and them singing. Sometimes it's about recording the heartbeat. There are musical instruments everywhere, and they also allow them to perform. The goal was to try to set up a stage so that they could perform and enjoy that experience. We travel to talk to hospitals that are interested in Sophie's Place, and I can't believe Steve and Barb are willing to let us be that conduit, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so this all is possible because of Forever Young Foundation, which is Steve and Barb's foundation, which they do several things to help children, but this became one of their entities. And so we raise money for this through Forever Young Foundation. So we're so grateful for them and what they've done. But so when that idea was born, they reached out to Primary Children's Hospital, and with all of these connections that Anne-Marie was talking about, they loved the idea. And so we had a meeting, we talked about it, and they said, we want to make this happen. And as it turns out, a lot of hospitals do have music therapy programs, but there wasn't one hospital that had a dedicated space for music therapy, and Primary Children's was the first in the country to have a dedicated space for music therapy. So it was a really big deal, because space is such a premium.
And I think every hospital that approached us, it was them approaching us. We've never gone out and tried to pursue. Yeah, we've never
solicited.
But they all have heard of that kind of specialty in their hospital that serves those children and heals, and they want a part of it.
Hospitals want to offer this as, they want to be leading hospitals, and so it's a program that they like to offer. So it's great for us, but we can only do one or two at a time, and then it takes 2-3 years to get through the whole process of finding the space, raising the money.
The spaces.
That's what one of my next questions was, what has your role been in designing those spaces?
Well, first of all, it was unbelievable when they said at Primary Children's, we want it to look like Sophie. I mean, I just think we're so fortunate that we get to say her name, that it's still such a vivid part of our lives. Tessa painted some paintings. Those are in the first Sophie's Place. We got to pick the fabrics, decide the wall coverings, the lighting.
I design murals.
Yes.
Every Sophie's Place has a mural of Sophie, which, I'm fortunate to be able to design. So it does have her personality.
Yeah. It actually, what you did was so cool. He took her journal of songwriting and he took those words where she would scratch out and change the word. And we have this beautiful book of those things. And he printed those on the mural. And then came the idea of what would be our message. What would we felt like there needed to be something that the children could relate to when they get there, because some of them are suffering, of course. And she had written a song, and we chose that as our motto, and it was "Shine On."
Shine on.
Yes. And it was also our motto that music changes everything.
So Sophie's Place, motto is music changes everything, but Shine On's like the, twin motto or whatever that's in it. So both of those things are in every Sophie's Place. They're all designed a little different according to the size and the colors just and which state it's in, and there are different factors.
Some are small.
Yeah. And but every one has a big sign that says "Shine On." Sometimes it's lit up in neon lights or something. So
I think it's interesting that a lot of these children or staff members, they don't know who Sophie was.
Yeah.
And we may have told the staff, but by the time somebody's volunteering and working there, they don't really know. It's called Sophie's Place. And they really didn't need to know her, but they feel her, and they tell us that. And I just think she is singing to 1,000 people, and she is changing lives in those special rooms.
She absolutely is. Yeah. And the staff, so there's a beautiful podcast episode, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, of 4 musical therapists that are in Sophie's Place, just kind of sharing their experiences. And I listened to that leading up to this. And I hope you have incredible people who are very loving and caring. And they did tell Sophie's story. I think they all are invested in the meaning behind Sophie's Place. It was really beautiful. In this podcast with the music therapist, they go through and they shared some examples, and I wanted to share them with you in case you haven't heard them because they're so special. But the music therapist said that they had a young girl who had been in an accident and she was nonverbal. So they actually were able to take her bed and wheel it into the Sophie's Place. And kind of going back to that, she hadn't had very many choices. There was no way for her to indicate a choice. And during a music therapy session, they found that they could read her eyes and they could actually get a yes or a no. And so they were able to give her a lot of new freedom that she couldn't and maybe wouldn't have discovered if they hadn't started using instruments. So I loved that. They talk about a 4-year-old who was there long-term waiting for a heart transplant many years. And she ended up having a standing weekly appointment in Sophie's Place. And it helped her, she said, navigate all the ups and downs. It was something for her to look forward to. And then the final example I wanted to share was they talked of a kid who was shy, and they would watch him from a distance walk past the room every day, but he never came in. And it was about a month into his stay when he finally came in. And it turns out that he, in his stay, has written 50 plus songs and recorded them and had a full-on concert. Oh my gosh. And those are things for his family, for him, that he will take and remember. That's how we process hard emotions. That's why, my business of learning to play an instrument, it's so that you can process these hard emotions and things that we deal with. So I just had to share those with you. It's making a difference.
I love hearing those. Yeah.
okay, you have 9. Is there 9 locations
There are 9.
currently?
Yeah.
Okay. And I heard that is it the Beach Boys funded
Yeah.
one of them in part?
Well, they did a concert as a fundraiser, and it was which
Yeah.
one of the Beach Boys? We can't remember his name. That's terrible. But
Well, so that was the one in Reno.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so he has a house in that area up in the mountains. And so he was connected with the hospital. So the hospital actually asked them to do a concert. And
Okay.
it was a private concert outdoors on a golf course.
we had to get up there and kind of sing too, and dance.
Well, we did all of that, but it wasn't like really open to the public. So they invited a lot of the donors,
Yeah.
and they made it really nice. They had great seats, and it was just a super fun time. But that one concert / fundraiser, they took donations, and they auctioned off things. That one fundraiser raised $1 million.
Really?
Which was the entire endowment needed.
That's incredible.
We end up paying half from the Forever Young Foundation and the fundraising that we do, and then the hospital takes on the other half.
Okay.
So that one event. But Imagine Dragons has done some really wonderful things, and the Huffs, so we have
Right.
some people that have really sided with, what the messaging is there.
It's a beautiful cause to get behind and to rally behind. Would you be able to, is there any story that you've been made aware of through Sophie's Place that stands out in your mind of a specific person or instance that it has helped or changed?
Yeah, we hear things all the time, and sometimes we'll get a note from a parent. It's really important for the children, of course, but sometimes it does just as much for the parents.
For sure.
And but one thing I remember was we went over to the cemetery one day to visit Sophie, and there was a note left on her grave. And why don't you tell them about that?
Well, I just can't believe they even knew where her grave was at that time. We had not gotten a gravestone, but it was a special place. And the note talked about her daughter having anorexia, and that you couldn't get her out of bed at the hospital. She wouldn't eat. Things were not going well. But when she heard of Sophie's Place, and after she went, she began to get out of bed and do anything she could to get to Sophie's Place. And I think she credited that experience.
For sure. Music therapy changed her life for sure. It was, they would try to do things like show her a menu and say, pick one thing. You don't even have to eat it. Just pick one thing off the menu. She couldn't even do that. But after she started attending music therapy and what it did for her, and in her mind, she was able to move forward, and she started to pick things and slowly eat. And then she was also a musician. So it really identified she was actually able to go in and play music.
Yeah.
And it
Big
just
transition.
totally changed her to where she overcame that.
How
and
cool.
was released from the hospital.
In that podcast that I was listening to with the music therapist, that's one of the main things that they touched on, is that these kids are in the hospital and they have no choice. They have no choice over what medications they have to take that day, what protocols and procedures and things that they have to do. But they get to walk into a door wide open at Sophie's Place, and they get to have a choice in what they do, in what they pursue, in what, they create. And so it's
beautiful.
I think that's so special about Sophie's Place. I had a really special experience and a personal experience with Sophie's Place. I hope I can quickly share with you. This last fall, we ended up in a stay at Primary Children's in Lehigh with one of our children. And it was supposed to just be an ER visit and turned into a multiple night stay. And the night we were admitted to the PICU, we go upstairs and I was just hit with this heaviness. There's evidence all around of how long those kids have been in there. Their rooms are decorated more than could ever happen in a day, a week, a month, or even a year. And you know that they've been there a long time. And as I would come in and out, my husband and I were trading off being with her, and you would just see the faces of the families that go up to visit, And as I was walking out my first night, I was feeling really heavy. And I just noticed in the corner of my eye a Sophie's Place sign. And it was the middle of the night, so it wasn't open at the time, but I just thought, went and peeked in and just thought of these sweet, beautiful children that have the option to go and to play and to be healed emotionally from what they're dealing with. I think it's so special. And I'm just hoping, I hope that if this can travel to one person to become more aware of it, whether to utilize the service in the hospital or to get them in more hospitals, it's just such an important thing.
I think I want to say that, first of all, I think none of us think we're going to need to be at the hospital. And we are surprised all the time when we hear from people that they have had to be there and they've been in Sophie's Place and now they know what it really is. You just don't think you're going to have that experience.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think one thing I've heard over and over is from the therapists is that there are a lot of kids that just feel so crummy and not good that they don't want to get out of bed. Yeah. And then once they discover the music therapy, that is the one thing and maybe the only thing that they'll get out of bed for. And if they can't, they will come to their bedside. So they do have carts. We actually,
we're celebrating
because it's an expense. Yeah. Not all hospitals have the money and the funds to figure that out. And so just recently, we've there are 2 or 3 now hospitals that we're calling it kind of a mini Sophie's Place, but we design the carts.
And they go room to room.
And so at least they have the carts. Yeah. And they've got the Sophie's Place logo and pictures on them, and then that way they can at least have the program in the hospital and visit them bedside. So
that's so special.
It's kind of just something when you're in those rooms and you see what's going on. We just imagine Sophie watching and looking down, and she had an expression when things were just so good. She would say, "My legs are tickling." And I just always really feel that she is fulfilled and that we're doing the right thing.
It's such a special and beautiful way to carry on her name. I love that her name is in the title and her legacy of, all the amazing qualities that she has, especially her music and her love for music. We talked a little bit about Shine On.
Yeah.
And that is a song that as I've come across, different things and listened to different things getting ready for this interview, I really loved hearing Shine On. And so I'm hoping that we can wrap up this interview by playing that and allowing our audience to hear her sweet and beautiful voice. And I think we will end with that. Is there anything else that you guys would want to share or want to say? Have we missed anything? I'm sure we missed a lot, but
yeah, I mean, we could keep going. I think another hour, but I think Anne-Marie should tell the story about Shine On, the song.
I would love to hear it.
What she was writing about, but ultimately we know what she was writing about. But it's a fun story.
It was Mother's Day. And Tessa and Sophie disappeared. We were having dinner later with his mom, and of course. And while we were at the dinner, the girl said, "We have something for you." And they sat there, and they had written the song Shine On in the very day, Mother's Day, and then performed it for us. And the song was for me for Mother's Day. And there are some parts in that song, if you listen to the words, it'll now make more sense. But yeah, we like to think that Sophie was leaving us one more special gift. It's hard to listen to, but it is the message that no matter what, that's what we have to do. So
It's going back to your choice that you've had to make.
Yeah.
You've got to just continue to choose joy, to shine on.
And such a great message for the children.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I am so grateful to have had you guys here. I'm grateful for the time that you've been able to carve out to have this conversation. And I don't think there's any better way that we can finish the episode than by listening to Shine On. Thank you for being here, Kent and Anne-Marie.
Years have come and gone, and you're still standing strong. Oh, I've never met anyone like you. You stay up late at night, working till the morning light. Oh, you're making all of our dreams come true. When I look into your eyes, something in me comes alive. Oh, I just hope you know that you really do shine through. And I know I'll never show it enough, but I wrote this just for you so you can see your light shines on me. And I know you're never giving up on me. I've been thinking of the memories. You planted flowers as big as me. Oh, why can't we go back a year or two? In the car with the radio loud, I would put my red face down. But I'll never forget burning down the house. 'Cause you really do shine through. And I know I'll never show it enough, but I wrote this just for you so you can see your light shines on me. And I know you're never giving up on me. I want you to be there when you're gone. I want you to hear me sing my song. You are the one who calls my name, and I'll always think of you the same. 'Cause you really do shine through, and I know I'll never show it enough, but I wrote this just for you so you can see your light shines on me. And I know you're never giving up on me. 'Cause you really do shine through, and I know I'll never show it enough, but I wrote this just for you so you can see your light shines on me. And I know you're never giving up on me. On me. On me.
You've been listening to More Than Musicians. Thanks so much for being here. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. If this episode meant something to you, please go ahead, share, subscribe, rate, or leave a review. It helps us more than you'll ever know. And if you or someone you know has a story you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Lastly, a huge thank you to Talmadge Thane and his team at Film Lab. They're who make this show possible.